Hey guys, this is Sean with ChordsScribble.com, and in this video I want to talk about bar chords. If you're struggling with bar chords like many other guitar players do, in this video I want to talk about two things that I think might move you closer to that aha moment when you can finally begin to feel comfortable with bar chords. When we talk about learning new chords in general, one common approach to getting proficient with chord changes is to practice by pivoting. So for example, take the open G chord for instance. It's one of the first chords that many guitar players learn. One approach is to pick three chords that are in the key of G and then to pivot to and from each of those and then start at the beginning again. So that would be to go from G to D to G, back to G, then to C, then to G, and then to E minor, and then you would start over, G, D. So that's one approach to doing it. However, with bar chords, it doesn't work that well. That's something I discovered a while back. When I was first learning bar chords and I was struggling, I didn't learn to play guitar until I was an adult, over 18. And it seems that it's harder for folks like me when you learn older because the muscle memory in your hand is really kind of ingrained. So it was difficult for me, and I wanted to share some things with you that kind of opened it up and really helped. One of the chords I really wanted to learn early on was the B minor because it just kept showing up in songs I was playing. And so I started to try my approach of pivoting. I'd play the B minor, then I would play the A, then I'd play the B minor, then I'd play the G. You know, I would try that pivot approach, and after about 6 months or a year, I just didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. So aha moment number one for me, and I'm not sure if it's going to be as impactful for you, but I did give this a lot of thought, a lot of analytical thought, which is probably something I do too much of. But the first big thing for me happened one night when I was trying to learn to play the Steve Miller Band's Go On, Take the Money and Run. I think it's just called Take the Money and Run. Let me switch to that song and show you what that looks like. Okay, so it's a very straightforward song. The whole thing is basically G, F, and C, and there's also a B flat in there that gets messed with. But for the sake of this video, I've left that out since it really has nothing to do with what I'm trying to communicate here. When I started to look at this tab, the first thing I did was what any open chord player would do. I started to try to play it with open chords, G, F, and then C. And what I learned right away was that the transition, the journey from G to F, or I should say the open G to F, is sort of a really weird feeling. It's actually, it feels like you're going around the block to get next door. And so I started looking at it, and I started saying, okay, maybe this is one where I'm going to have to start playing bar chords. So I started messing around with the bar chord G into F and then the C. Now, after playing that for about a half an hour, I started to realize that there was something to be learned from this. And that something was that my original approach to learning bar chords, which was to put myself into a barred position, take myself out, put myself back in, take myself out, put myself back in this particular case, or in the case of bar chords, it really wasn't the way to do this. There was something missing from that approach. And what was missing was that when I would make the attempt to bar and then jump back out of it again, my reattempt to come back in, I was really trying to make that perfect. And when you're just working with one bar chord, that's what you should be doing. But as soon as you start moving up and down the neck with a bar chord, you quickly notice a couple of things. One of them is that your hand relaxes on the bar a lot easier. And this is not something you get when you're practicing bar chords like I initially was practicing. In other words, going from open chords to bar chords. You don't get a chance to relax because you're constantly transitioning back into that bar shape. But staying in the shape and going back and forth, in this case I'm just going G to F, what happens is a couple of things. The first thing you notice is that you get very used to clamping and adjusting, as opposed to trying to get into that shape and then just wanting to clamp and not wanting to move your hand. You're almost rigid. You get very used to, when you're going from bar chord to bar chord in the same shape, you don't mind if you miss and you adjust incrementally as you're playing. Again, this is not something you get if you try pivoting in and out of certain bar chords. The second thing I noticed is that there's an awful lot more control that the left hand has when it's using a bar chord as opposed to an open chord. For instance, muting strings, just a slight release allows you to mute the string, whereas with an open chord, let's say I'm doing a G, there's not much that you can do to mute that unless you want to mute it with your right hand. So the left hand becomes a very big rhythmic contributor to the song whenever you're using bar chords. And what ended up happening for me was I went from a guy who was very reluctant to play a song with bar chords to a guy who looked for reasons to play with bar chords because you could get so much more out of them. The extra bonus you got from being able to basically add some rhythm to the song with the contribution of the left hand that you weren't getting from the left hand previously was a big help. So before I move to the second tip that I want to offer, my advice would be to just practice this song, or just really it's not even this song, it's just this G, F progression, and back out into C, back to G, F, C. Just practice that progression. It's a very important progression that will, I think, bring you miles in terms of bar chords, and it'll make you a lot more comfortable jumping down and fretting another bar chord that may be, right after an open chord. Okay, so the second thing that I want to share here that really helped me was an understanding of which chord to chord transitions were the important ones for me to practice. In other words, I really didn't take a good hard look at the music I was playing to know that here I am, I really wanted to master this B minor chord, and if I looked at my music, about 90% of the time when I needed that B minor, the chord right before it was A. It was always the same one. So why on earth was I running around practicing pivoting to and from B minor from all these different chords when really I could get a lot more traction very quickly out of just learning the one transition from A to B minor? And so what I would advise you to do is take a good hard look at the music that you play, and if there's a specific bar chord that you're trying to master, look across each of your songs and try to find maybe if there's a similar chord right in front of that particular bar chord, and just practice that one transition. And what ends up happening is that you end up getting a lot more reward out of the time that you put in for practice. And just to give you a couple of examples, for me, there's a song by Alan Jackson called "It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere," and there's that A to B minor transition. There's also another one. It's let's see if I can find it here. It's "Pretty Good at Drinking Beer" by Billy Currington. There's this A to B minor transition. There's a bunch more in my song list that I play that have this A to B minor. So as I started looking closer, it just was a way for me to really isolate in and get some payoff from my practice time that I could use in real playing very quickly. So I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.